What's up everybody, welcome back to another video. Today what I want to do is introduce you to WP CLI. This is the command line interface for WordPress. What WP CLI allows you to do is to manage your WordPress installation from the command line. And this means you can download the WordPress core, you can install plugins, you can install themes, and basically anything that you could do in the WordPress admin section, you could do with WP CLI. You can even create content via the command line. Now this is a game changer, and the reason for that is because if you're managing more than one website, or if you want to make your workflow more productive, more efficient, and more streamlined, using the command line is the way to go. Now just as an example, if you've been following WordPress for a while, then you know that they have what's called the 5-minute install. But in this video, I'll show you how to make that even faster. Now I'm going to show you how to do this in Mac OS, and I'll show you how to do it in Windows as well. I'm going to start off with Mac, and then I'll jump on the big machine later and I'll show you on Windows. Alright, so on Mac OS and on Windows, if you want to check it out now, you can go to wp-cli.org and you can get some more information about what this is. And it gives you on the homepage a brief description and explanation about how you could use WP CLI in your workflow. And it shows you some of the things that you can do. Now for installing, you have a couple of different options here on Mac OS. For my purposes, what I want to do is I'm going to be using Homebrew for this. It's the package manager for Linux and Mac OS. If you don't have Homebrew installed in your system, you can copy this command right here into your clipboard, then go into your terminal, and then you would paste it in right there. I already have it, so I'm just going to remove that. Alright, so in order to get Mac OS ready to use WP CLI, there's a couple of things you're going to need to do, especially if you're using MAMP as your local development environment. There's a couple of commands you're going to have to do and a couple of files and folders you're going to have to create. Now, if you're using a more modern version of Mac OS, then you're probably going to be using the Z Shell environment. And if that's the case, then you're going to have to run this command over here. Alright, so with this command, what we're doing is we're putting MySQL into your path. So we have echo, single quotation mark, export, path equals, double quotation mark, /applications, /mamp, /library, /bin, colon, and then the path variable, closing off the double quotation mark, then the single quotation mark there, then two greater than signs, then a space, then your tilde, /, then period, ZSHRC. Now if you're using bash, then you'll get rid of the ZSHRC and just put in bash RC. And then at that point, when you press enter, it'll be within your path. Alright, so now that's done. Now if we go over here, we see we can install it with Homebrew. And the command for that would be brew install WP CLI. So you take this, you would copy it, go back to your terminal, press enter, and then it'll start the process of installing WP CLI into your system. The reason why I'm using Homebrew here is because I want to be able to just bypass a couple of other steps and to be able to use WP instead of the longer command that you would typically have to use. Alright, so now I'm going to my htdocs folder. Now this command here that I just typed out is an alias. And if you want to learn more about aliases and how you could use them in Windows, Linux, and Mac OS, let me know and I'll do a video on that and give you a deep dive. It'll make you an even more productive programmer. But let's get back to this. Alright, so I'm going to my htdocs folder, and here what I would do is create a new directory, make dir, and then bin. I want to create a bin directory in this folder, and I want to create a file that's going to go in there. So you would type out make dir or mkdir space bin, then hit enter. Once you do that, you'll have the new directory. Now we could change to that directory using the cd command, cd space bin, then hit enter. And now I already have the file created. And now the file that I created is called install-wp.sh. So I'm going to open up this file and I'll show you the code that I have in there. So here I'll just type out nano install-wp.sh. And if you don't have the file there, when you type out nano, it'll create that file. And I'll hit enter. Now what is this? This is not actually needed by WP CLI, but what it is shell scripting. And I'm going to get back to this in a few. But I just want to give you a preview of what we're going to end up doing, because I'm going to take what's already an optimized system of using WP CLI and make it even more optimized, making ourselves even more productive. Now, if you're using the Z shell, then this is the shebang over here that you're going to have. If you're using bash, then instead of ZSH, that would be bash. But again, we'll get back to this file in a few. So I'm going to Get out of there. And now what I want to do is see if WP CLI is properly installed here. So for that, I'm typing out WP space -- info, and it's telling me that it is properly installed. All right, so what can we do here? I'm in my htdocs folder. Now what I want to do is let's download WordPress, a brand new installation of WordPress over here. So I'm going to make a new directory. We see we have it there, new WP. I'm going to change into that directory. Right now you're going to see it's empty. What I'm going to do now is type out WP core download. So this is downloading WordPress core into that folder. And now let's see what we have. We see we have the WP-signup. We have the contents that would be in a typical WordPress installation. You can type out WP core version to get the version number. And you see we have this current version there. We can type out WP core check update. And it says we don't have a config file. So let's create that now. Now, mind you, for this, what I also have going is my server is running. I'm running my MAMP server. So you're gonna need that up and running in order to get this stuff going on. All right, so the command I'll use here, let me clear the screen. Again, you're gonna see me type out a bunch of these individual characters, and if I don't really explain it, it means it's most likely an alias. It's for my workflow, it expedites my process. If it's important to the process of working with WP CLI, I'll explain to you exactly what it's doing. All right, so for here, we have to create our config file. So I'll type out WP config create space -- db name is going to be equal to, let's say, new WP. The database user, DB user, it's going to be equal to root space -- db pass for password is going to be equal to, if you're on MAMP, it's going to be root. If you're using XAMPP, it's probably going to be blank. Now let's see what happens here, because I did not create that database yet in my database. Before I hit enter on that, let's go here, let's go to tools, PHPMyAdmin, and I don't have new WP here yet. So let's see what happens when I hit enter on this command here. Success, generated the wp-config.php file. Now we're going to reload, and we don't have the database here. But if we go into the terminal, I'll type out the long command for this. We now see we have our WP config file. Previously, we didn't have it. We only had the sample config file there. But now we have the WP config.php file. We can cat that file. And cat means to view the content of that file, and you're not going to be making any changes. You're just viewing the values that's inside there. So you see here, it defined our database, it defined the user and the root, created our salts. And now take a look at this here. I'm going to show you how to change this very quick. We can go back here to the browser, and go right here. Let's go to the commands. It'll take us to this location here under developer.wordpress.org. And these are the commands that you could work with. So we're going to go here to the WP config, and we're going to use this command over here. Let's copy that. Let me paste that in. So before I hit enter, scroll back up, and remember here, we'll look at the first line. You'll see, I'll make that bigger, /cho, and look to see if anything's going to change here. So now we got success, shuffle the salt keys. Let's go back to that spot, and you see those values have changed. Well, wait a minute, why would you want to do that? Well, there could be a security reason for that. You may want to, every now and then, change out these different values in order for improving your security posture on your site. So that makes it very easy to do. All right, so what else can we do? All right, let me clear the screen. I'm going to paste in another snippet here. And what this is doing is going to create our database. And ideally, it'll use the values that we put within our WP config file. So let's see if this works. We're typing in WP space DB for database, space create, space -- path is equal to, and then double quotation marks, and then the $, and then we have WP_dir, and then the closing double quotation mark. So let's hit enter. Houston, we have a problem. And the problem is simple. I'm jumping ahead of myself. This is a value that I created in a variable inside that install script that I showed you earlier, but we're not there yet. So I'm going to have to go here, and inside the double quotation marks, I'll put in /applications, /mamp, /htdocs, /new WP. All right, so let's try this again. Let's see if this works. hit enter, and success, the database is created. All right, let's go back to the browser. We're here. I didn't refresh yet. Now we see we have new WP. All right, so now let's take it to the next step. I have another code snippet here. I'm going to paste it in, and then I'm going to change out the values of the variables and put in the correct information. All right, so we have WP space core space install, and then for the URL, put in localhost /new WP. And now for my version of MAMP, what I did is I set it to have the default ports used by Apache. So I don't have the 8888. If you need to have that there, then make sure you put it where it belongs. For the site title, type out new WP. For the admin user, I'll say demo. Then for the admin password, I'll say root. Now, mind you, this is on a local installation. So if this was on a production site or a production server, you would put secure values in here. But this is just for demonstration purposes. So for admin email, and then again, for the path, I'll put in the / applications. All right, so now let me just double check everything's good. We have WP core install. We have the URL path, which is localhost / new WP. The title, new WP, that'll be the title of the site. Admin user is going to be demo. The password for that is going to be root. The email, I just put in a dummy email in there. And then for the path, I put applications / mamp / htdocs / new WP. So now what this is going to do is install WordPress. Instead of going through the GUI, this will do it for you. All right, so let's check it out. Success, WordPress installed successfully. Now let's check it out then. Let's go here, go to My Websites, New WP, and we're there. Let's go into the admin section. Let's see if those credentials work, and it does. All right, so now let's see for our user profile. You see it has our email, and we're good. Now, what about permalinks? You could change the permalinks here, but let me show you how to do it via the command line, because that's the purpose of this. Let's go back here, and then for this, we're going to use WP space rewrite space structure and then post name. So before I hit enter, you see this is what it's currently showing. And if you go to the front, if you go to the article, you see how it's going to look here. But if you go back here and hit enter, rewrite structure set, rewrite rules flushed. All right, so now let's go back here. Let's refresh this. You're going to see it's not found. We go over here. What's going on? Let's go back. Let's go to the dashboard. Take a look at permalinks. And it was just our cache. Now, a trick for that, if you run into cache issues, you can go into inspect to inspect the elements. I already have my settings set up properly, but for this, you would go and disable cache while DevTools is open. So I like leaving that open anyway. But you see that's working. All right, so what else can we do? Let's go to the back end. Let's go to plugins. Let's say I don't want these plugins there. I could delete them here, or I could do it from WP CLI. So let's do that. All right, so I'll put in Akismet. We're putting in WP space plugin space delete space Akismet. I'll put another space, and I believe the other one's called hello. We have it over here. Let's see what happens when I hit enter. And it shows me that it deleted both the Akismet and hello plugins. Let's reload this page. And we see they're no longer there. All right, so that's pretty cool. But what else can we do? Now, this is where the fun begins. This is where we can install a whole bunch of plugins at once, all in one shot. So I'm going to paste it in here. And what we're doing is typing out WP space plugin space install. And then these are the slugs of all the plugins I want to put in. And these are developer-friendly plugins that I use while I'm testing themes and plugins. So I'm putting the debug bar actions and filters, the classic editor, the default featured image, plugin inspector, log deprecated notices, etc. All right, so I'm installing those now. I'll hit return, and it's going to go through the process of installing all of those plugins into that WordPress installation. And it's a lot faster than going through the back end and having to search for each one and then individually install them into your system. Now, I always recommend that you have a code snippet file, that you have a bunch of these snippets set up, so that way you can just copy and paste them and put them right there into your terminal. All right, so now we have those installed. If we go back here, we reload, now we see they're there, but they're not active. You could have used the -- activate flag, but I wanted to just show you first the process of installing, and now I'll type out WP plugin activate -- all. All right, let's hit enter or return. And now it shows us that we were successful in activating all these plugins. Let's go back here to the admin section. And now you see they're all activated. It's a lot faster. Clear the screen. And now if you needed to update your plugins, you could update the plugin like this with this command. And then you just put in the plugin name, or you could just type out -- all. It'll check to see if they're already up to date or not. I think this is a command. Let's see. Yes, WP plugin list. This shows you the list of plugins that you currently have, lets you know if there's an update available, and the version number for that plugin and their status. Now, another thing I always recommend doing is take good backups of your site. So now we have our site set up. We have some plugins installed. Let's take a backup of the database itself. Instead of using a backup plugin, we could just type out WP DB export, and I'll just name it backup.sql. All right, so what we're doing is putting the WP command, the DB for database, and exporting it. Hit enter, and now we have that file just created right there. So that's how simple it is to take a backup of your database with WP CLI. You could even type out WP DB size. It'll let you know the size of your database. WP DB size -- tables. And it shows you the size of your individual tables. Or you could type out WP DB tables directly. And now you have a list of your database tables. Then you can run WP DB check. They're all okay. WP DB optimize if you want to optimize your database. And then WP DB repair in case you need to repair anything. Now, another really cool thing you could do with WP CLI is you could create content with it. So let me show you how to do that real quick. First thing I want to do is get rid of the content that's already there. So if we go back to the browser, let's go to posts. We see we have the hello world. Let's go to pages. We see we have those. All right, so let's hit enter on this. WP site empty. All right, let's go back to the browser, reload, voila, that's gone. Go to pages, and that's gone. And that's why I say it's good to take a backup, because let's say you run a command that completely deletes everything that you have, and you realize you had something there that you needed. Now at least you have a backup file of that. Now I'm going to show you another command that enables you to create content really easily on your site. I have this long command here that I'm going to paste in. So what are we doing? First things first, I'm using WP post create, and then -- post _ type is equal to post. The post title is going to be WP CLI post creation, post content -- post content. Don't forget the equal sign, the single quotation mark, and this will be the content here. I have 2 paragraphs of lorem ipsum, the closing single quotation mark right there, and then I'm going to make the post status to publish. So make sure yours looks like this. Make sure the content or the dummy content you're going to have inside the middle over here is inside the individual single quotation marks. Hit return and created post 3. Let's go back here. And now we have that. Let's view it. All right, so now we got it there. But we don't have a featured image. We see it's post 3, right? The next thing we're going to do, I'm going to paste in another command here. I'm using WP media import space, then period, / in the root of my htdocs folder, I have an image.jpg file. So now I'm going to be importing this image into my WordPress installation. And now we have it there. And the ID is 5. So that's important to remember. Paste another command here. WP post meta update 3. That's the ID of that post. And then the thumbnail ID is 5. Let's hit return, and we got success. Let's go back here, let's reload, and now we have a featured image. Now that's awesome. All right, so another thing we could do, I'm going to paste in this command, wp post generate -- count 20. What I want to do is generate 20 new items into the dashboard. So now it generated it. Let's go back to our dashboard. Let's go to post. And we see we have all these articles. But if we look at them, they're empty. So I'm going to type out wp site empty. So now we go back here, post. Now you see we have nothing. I'm going to paste in another command here. All right, so it's taking the last command that we had and put it at the end. And what we're doing is we're going to echo space -e space, then inside double quotation marks over here, and it ends over here, we have some lorem ipsum over here. And then we're going to give it a space and then use the pipe in order to run this command as well. wp post generate post content count 20. Now let's hit return. All right, let's go back to the dashboard. All right, let's view it. And now we have dummy content added. Now we can do a whole lot more with this, but I also want to do this on Windows. So I'm going to show you a couple of more things here, and then we'll jump over there. I could always do a database reset, but we'll do that in a few. First, we still have that image there, I believe. Let me see. Unless it got deleted when we emptied the site, and it did. All right, so we will go to WP Media. We'll import that again. It's there. And now WP Media regenerate. We're going to regenerate the image. That means we're going to resize it for our theme. So that works. Now another thing we could do, let's go to the commands. We go to theme. And let's say we're going to grab this right here. But first let's go over here, see what we currently have. This is what we have. Let's go back here and let's paste that snippet. We're going to use WP theme install 2016 and we're going to activate it. Let's hit return. Success. And you see it switched to 2016. And now you see it's different. All right, so that's a lot of work that we did. And I know I covered a lot, but now I want to show you how to make this super simple to do, at least to get started with WP CLI. I'm going to go to the directory above. I'm going to remove the new WP. Remove -rf to make it recursive, and then that folder. And we see it's no longer there. All right, so now let me go into the browser. You see it's not working. All right, we'll go here. We're going to go to that database, operations, drop database. All right, so now you see we don't have new WP. All right, so now I'm going to show you that install script. I'm changing directories to bin. We see we have that script right there. I'll type out nano install-wp.sh. If you don't have the file already created, it'll create it for you. If you do have it created, it'll just open it up. And I'll change some values here. Change that to WP new. WP new. All right, so what I'm doing here in the first line, we have our shebang. Now this is if you're using the Z shell environment for your terminal environment. If you're using bash, then instead of ZSH, you'll use bash. And then I'm defining some variables. So DB name is going to be WP new. DB user is going to be root. Password is going to be root. Host is going to be localhost. Then this is going to be the directory location, the site URL, the site title, the admin, the password, and the email. Now I'm going to be taking a lot of those commands that I had earlier and just put it here. And now I could just run one command and it'll do the whole entire process for me. So we first download the WordPress core. Then we create the config file and we're using the values of those variables here. DB name, DB user, password, host, and path. All right. Then we're going to be setting debug to true. We'll create our database. Then we'll go through the process of installing WordPress and it'll use the value of those variables up above, site URL, site title, admin user, admin password. And then we're going to install plugins, WP plugin install, debug bar actions and filters, And again, remember, these are space separated, and these are the slugs of those individual plugins. Then we're going to activate all the plugins. Let me just go over here. You see the values there. And same thing here. These are the same that we had before, but now it's over here. And just remember, at the end, we have the -- path, assign the value of WP_dir. And that's the same thing here as well. I'll make it small real quick, just so you see. At the end, -- path. Then over here, the same thing. At the end, we have -- path. But you notice for the plugins, we don't need the quotation marks because we're not using variables. All right, so then we're going to activate the plugins. So WP plugin activate -- all, and then the path right there. And then right after that, we're going to delete the default plugins. Then we'll delete the default post and page. Then we're going to generate the default content. We use echo-e. And then inside double quotation marks, I have some lorem ipsum. And at the end of it, we have our double quotation marks. Then we're going to pipe in the following command. WP post generate -- post content -- count is going to be for 20 items. And then path, again, WP_dir. Then we're going to set the permalink structure, rewrite structure, post name. And then we're going to create a couple of user accounts. WP user create John Doe. That'll be the email. The role will be subscriber. The password, I'm going to make it very simple here. The display name, John Doe. And again, -- path, and then WP_dir. Next line, WP user create Jane Smith. And again, the same process here. Email, subscriber, password, display name, and the path. And the path is always going to be -- path equals quotation mark, WP_dir, quotation marks. And then at the end, we'll echo out WordPress installed successfully. So once you do all that, you'll hit Control-X, you'll save to the buffer, hit return. And now all we have to do is just watch the magic happen. I'm going to type out, let me clear the screen, install, and then hit return. All right, so it's creating the directory. You see the process here. It's going to download WordPress. WordPress downloaded is generating the config file. It updated the constants. The database is created. WordPress installed. It's downloading all the plugins. It installed 13 plugins, then it activated them. And then it deleted the Akismet and Hello plugins. Then it deleted the default content. It rewrote the permalinks. It created 2 new users. And then it echoed out WordPress installed successfully. All right, let's see if that worked. All right, so we see here what we have. I'm going to reload. Now we have the new one. We see we have the database tables. We see we have 3 users, John Doe and Jane Smith and myself, of course. All right, so that's working. Let's type out WP new. We have that there. And we have our demo content already set up. All right, let's log in. All right, so now we go to plugins. And we have those plugins installed and activated. And we have those plugins deleted. Go to users. See, we have those users set up. Go to permalinks. You see it's set up to post name. And we're good. That's the power of WP CLI. Now imagine having this on your server. First thing I recommend is obviously playing around with it a lot on your computer, in your local environment. You can even do some database searches with WP CLI. Get very familiar with how it operates, and then once you're comfortable, maybe create a staging environment online. Play around with it there, get familiar, then once you're comfortable with it, then take it to your production server. All right, so that's a lot that we covered. I'm going to leave a link to my website with the code snippets that I used here, so definitely check out the description area, because that's a lot of code snippets that I had. And now I want to jump on the Windows computer and show the Windows users the exact same thing, but the setup is a little bit different. And the setup is actually kind of how you would set up on a Linux distribution as well. So let's jump to Windows. All right, so now let's get familiar with WP CLI and setting it up on Windows. All right, so if you go to wp-cli.org, this is the website for the command line interface for WordPress. And here you see some information about the things you can do. Basically, you can do anything that you would be able to do via the admin section in your web browser, but instead you use the command line, which is going to be extremely more efficient. You could download the WordPress core, you can install a plugin, install themes, create and manage users, you can create content via the command line, optimize your database, backup your database. There's a lot of stuff you could do. All right, so the first thing I did was I started my web server. I'm using XAMPP. So you see I have Apache and MySQL running. And also what I did is I created a bin folder within my user directory. So I'm using Git Bash because I do use Git for version control. And with Git, I also get Nano, which is an editor that's within the command line. So I'm going to change directories, go to my user directory. Another way to go about it, change directories, ~, and I'm there within my user directory. All right, so sometimes I'll use keyboard shortcuts, sometimes I'll use terminal shortcuts, and I'll try to give you both the full path and the shortcut as well. All right, so I'm gonna type out one of my aliases that I created. And if you want to learn more about aliases, let me know and I'll create a full tutorial about them. That'll take your workflow to another level. But instead of typing out ls-lah, I'll just hit L, and now I see everything I have within that folder. So this bin folder is not native. So when you want to create a folder, you would type out the make dir command, followed by the name of the folder you want to create. So it's make dir space bin. All right, so what I'll do is I'll change directories into the bin folder, and here I have 3 files that I created. One of them I downloaded, and then 2 of them I created. So the first thing is to download the wp-cli.far file, and you would get that from the website. So you would click on download, and you would choose that folder right there. I already downloaded it, so I'm not going to do it again, but you would download it, and then you could run this command right here to make sure that it's set up properly. But now the next thing I did, let me go back to the terminal, was I created another file called WP, and it has no extension. So I'm going to type out nano WP, and what I did was I put this snippet of code in that file. So if you don't have the WP file already created, typing out nano space WP, it'll create the file for you and it'll be blank. Then you would just put in this code. This is the shebang, and then this is going to be what's required in order to just use WP instead of the longer command that you saw before. All right, so paste in this command or put in this command, and definitely check out the description area because I'll leave a link to my article on my website where I give you all the code snippets in this video tutorial, and I'll probably add a bunch more in there as well. All right, so paste that in there. Once you're done, hit Control X, and you might have to hit Y if you made any changes, and just hit enter. All right, so this third file over here, install WP-sh, I'll show you that real quick. I'm using the cat command, and it shows you the content of that file. So this is another shell file over here. And what this is doing, this is the shebang. We're defining variables and we're running through these series of commands. But don't copy this down yet. I just wanted to give you a sneak peek on that. All right, so in order to make sure that our bin folder is in our path, on Windows, what we're going to do is hit the Windows key, and then you'll type out environment. And before you even finish, you should be able to see right here, edit the system environment variables. Click on this over here. You're gonna get the screen here, this pop-up. Want to make sure you're in advanced. And then you're gonna go down here to environment variables. Once you click on that, in your user section, you can go to path, click on edit, and then you're gonna get the screen over here. So what you wanna do, if you don't already have it in your path, which you most likely don't, unless you already read the article on my website, then you want to click on New, click on Browse. You'll browse to your user folder, click on Bin, and then click on OK. I already have it, so I'm not going to need to do this. But once you're done, you'll have it there. You'll see it within your path. Then you just click on OK, then click OK, and then OK. And that's how you'll make sure that you have your bin folder within your user path on your system. Now I'm typing out htdocs. This is one of my aliases, and it's going to take me to my htdocs folder. This command won't work for you unless you create aliases for yourself. So the other command will be change directory. I'm using XAMPP, and right there. I run back to my C drive. So you see I'm there now. Type in my alias again. Takes me to the same place. All right, so what I did here is this is where our project is going to live. Right now you see the files that I currently have. I'm going to check to make sure that WP CLI is working properly. And we see that it does. As long as you get this information, you see that it's working the way it should. All right, so I'm going to create a new directory over here. Make dir WP test. So now we see it's right there. I'm going to change into that directory. We see it's empty. I'm going to clear the screen. I'll make this a little bit bigger for now. All right, so what can we do? Well, from right here, instead of going into the browser, downloading WordPress, extracting it, placing it into our htdocs folder, we're just going to use a simple command. It'll do it for us. WP core download. Hit enter. And now it's going to download the latest version of WordPress into that directory. All right, so we see that it downloaded successfully. Now we see the files that we have. So I showed you the longer snippet there, the command ls-lah, and that shows you the contents of that folder, along with invisible files. My shortcut, I have a few aliases that do the same thing. What else can we do? We downloaded WordPress, but we see we don't have the wp-config.php file. We have the sample file, but not the config file. Let's go back to the browser. Let's go over here to commands. This is the developer.wordpress.org website, and this is the page dedicated to all the commands for the CLI. This is for the config file. So we're going to use wp-config and then create. We're going to need the database name, database username, database password, the host, a prefix if we want, the character set, etc. All right, so now let's go back to the terminal. I'm going to clear the screen. I'm going to paste in another command here, and we see we have wp config create, then we have --db name equals, inside the double quotation marks, we have wp test, close that off, and then we have the db user set to root. The password's going to be empty because on XAMPP it's empty by default. And again, we're on a local development environment, so this is okay. If you're on a production environment, if you're going to use this on your server, you're going to want to make sure these values are extremely secure. But before you even think about using it on your server, play around with it locally. Get really familiar with how it works. So we have the password there is empty. The database host is localhost. Then the path is going to be set to that folder. Let's hit enter. And it generated that wp config file for us. We see we have it right up here. We can take a look at that file with the cat command. And we see the values that it has. It set our database user, the password, the host, the database name. We have our salts generated. And actually, let's take a look at this real quick. Look at these values. I'm going to show you one thing you could do with WP CLI. Let me clear the screen. I'm going to paste in another command. This is going to change the salts. Now, the salts are used for security purposes, and every now and then you might want to change them in order to strengthen your security profile. So you see these are the current values right here. Well, with this command, it shuffled the salts. Let me look at that config file again. Scroll up. Now you see the difference. These are the new values. If we scroll even further, we'll see the old values. So with one command, you can easily update the salts on your WordPress installation. All right, but there's a whole lot more we could do. Right now, if we go back to our browser, even though we created our config file, we still need a database. Well, we could go through the process of creating the database here, or we could do a WP CLI. Back to the terminal. All right, so what I'm going to do now is paste in another command. This is wp db create --path is going to be equal to, and the quotation marks is going to be the path to our WP test folder. And then what this is going to do, this command, is going to look for the config file, and based on the values there, it'll create the database for us. Let's see if that works. Hit enter, and it says successful. All right, so remember, WP db create, the path, and the path to your WordPress installation. Now let's go to the database and see if that indeed worked. Let's reload, and now we see we have the WP test. It is an empty database. So now we gotta get it set up. All right, so let's go back to our terminal. Let me clear the screen. I'm gonna paste in the next command. All right, so for this one, we're running wp core install, the URL. This is for my server environment. The title I wanna give the site, the admin user, the password I'm gonna give it, the email, the path to our WordPress installation. And again, this is locally installed, so I could use these very insecure credentials here. But if you're on a production site, yeah, this should be a lot harder. Let's hit enter on this command and see it install WordPress. And it says success. Let's go back to our browser. Let's reload. Now we see we have the 12 database tables here. All right, so now we see we have our website set up. Let's go into the admin. Let's try out those credentials, those really secure credentials. And now we see we have WordPress set up. We see we have the default post, the pages, the plugins. We only have one user, and for the permalinks, we have it set to that. All right, so let's change this stuff around. Go back to terminal. But now before we start changing things around, we downloaded WordPress, but now let's see the core version. We see that's the current version. We're checking for an update. and it's already the latest version. If we needed to update, we would run that command. WordPress is up to date. This is a lot faster than going into the admin section and then having to click on the individual icons. And again, if you want to learn about aliases, let me know and I'll create a video on that and I'll show you how you can make this even more streamlined. But now let me see. I want to see how many plugins I have installed. I have 2 plugins installed. All right, so I'm going to say WP plugin, delete, Akismet, and then hello. I can directly delete them because they're already inactive. If they were active, instead of delete, you would type out deactivate. All right, so now let's try that. And it shows us we have no plugins installed. All right, so now let's say I want to install a bunch of developer plugins, or if I'm creating a client website, I have a bunch of plugins I know I need to install. I can go through the process of uploading them or downloading them from the admin section one by one, but that could take a while. Instead, I'm going to show you how to install a bunch of plugins very quickly. I'm pasting this command. So now I'm saying WP plugin install, and then I'm putting in the slugs of the plugins I want to install. And these are found on the WordPress repository. So I have the slugs there. Before I hit enter, let's go to the admin section. We see that we no longer have those 2 other plugins. Let's go back to terminal. Now if I hit enter, it's going to start installing all those plugins. All right, so now that installed 13 plugins. Let's go back to the browser, reload the page, and now we see we have them installed. Let's go back to terminal. Let's say we want to activate them. I'm going to clear the screen. WP plugin activate -- all. Now they're all activated, and we have our list of plugins there. Go back to the browser, reload, done. So that's good. Now, let's say I want to get rid of these pages here. I could type out WP site empty. Now it says, are you sure you want to empty the site? This is the location of all posts, links, comments, and terms. Go back to the browser, reload, empty. Now if you need to update your plugins, you can say WP plugin update. And if there's any updates available, it'll update it for you. What if you need to back up your database? You can type out WP-DB export and then say backup.sql. It's always a good idea to back up your database. And with this command, it's easy to do. Hit enter. And now we see we have a backup.sql file just created. You could also check out your database size. You could say WP-DB size tables. And it tells you the size of each table. This command gives you a list of your tables, WP-DB tables, and then we can say WP-DB optimize. Instead of downloading an optimization plugin, you could just run some commands. You could also type out WP-DB repair or WP-DB check. Now the next command I'm going to show you is how to create demo content if you're working on a development site. We have 2 commands here first. We have the echo command, space -e, then inside the double quotation marks that's here and here, I have lorem ipsum. This is all lorem ipsum inside the double quotation marks. Then I'm using the pipe character to use this command as well. This is the WP post generate, post content, and the amount of content we want to create is 20. Now remember, we emptied the site, so we have no content there now. But once I hit enter on this command, it's going to generate 20 posts with this lorem ipsum. Let's hit enter. All right, let's go back to the browser just to check that out. All right, so now we have 20 articles. Let's view in the browser, and there we go. But look at this, we have our permalink structure set up this way. Not a big fan of that, so how can we change that? First, I'm going to go into my development mode, pull up my development tools, because I'm going to make sure that I'm not going to deal with cache issues, because I disabled cache right here, disable cache while DevTools is open. All right, so I'm going to have this set up. I'm going to go back to terminal, paste in this command. Before I hit enter, back to the browser real quick. Let's go to the dashboard. Let's go to settings and permalinks. We see this is the current structure there, but instead of changing it here, I'll just do it in terminal. All right, so I'm going to hit enter, WP rewrite structure post name, and it worked. Now let's go back to the browser, reload, and now let's try those articles. Might get an error initially, but if we go back to permalinks and check it out, we see we have it set there, and it's fine. All right, so now let me show you how we can publish content in a different way. Go back here, I'm going to paste in this command. I'm going to use WP post create. The post type is going to be a post. The post title is going to be WP CLI post creation. The content is going to be inside these single quotation marks. Again, it's going to be lorem ipsum. And then the status is going to be publish. I'll hit enter. And it created it. Notice here, post 24. Let's go back to the browser. Probably just type out 24 right there. It says not found. Let's go back to posts. Obviously, we named it different. So we named it WP CLI post creation. So the URL is going to reflect that. All right, so we see we have the post here, but it has no featured image. Let's fix that now. Preview the files in my root of the htdocs folder. And what I want to do is place an image here. All right, so I pasted that image and I'll just rename it to image.jpg. All right, so it's inside my htdocs folder. Back to terminal. I'll run that command again. And we see we now have that image.jpg file there. All right, so now what I want to do is I'm going to type out WP media import. It's in the directory directly above this one. All right, so it gave us a success message and the ID is 25. Now remember, the post ID was 24. So now, let me clear the screen. I'll type out WP post meta update 24. That's the ID of that post. Underscore thumbnail underscore ID and then 25. So we're going to take the ID of the post that we just uploaded and the image we just uploaded. These are the two IDs. You will get those based on the output over here. Hit enter and success. Let's go back to the browser. Let's reload. And now we have our featured image. All right, so what else can we do? Let's say WP user list. We can see the users we currently have. Now I want to create a new user. So I'm going to say WP user create John. That'll be the display name. And the email will be that. And we'll give them the user role equal to subscriber. So WP user create John Smith is the email and role subscriber. Done. And it created a password for them. Now if we take a look at the list, we see we have that brand new user there. All right, so let's say we want to delete that user. WP user delete John. They have no post, so we could just say yes. And now that user is gone. All right, so now let's say we have a bunch of media that we want to regenerate. Instead of using a plugin, we could just type out this command and it's going to regenerate the image that we currently have there. And you see it's done. All right, let's go back to the browser real quick. I want to see what themes we have. All right, so these are the 3 themes we currently have, and this is the active theme. Let's go back to terminal. All right, so I'll paste in this right here. All right, so WP theme install 2020, and I'll type out -- activate to make it the active theme. I hit enter. Now it's installing the 2020 theme, it's downloading it, installing it, and then it's going to activate it. All right, let's go back to the browser. Let's reload. And now you see the active theme is 2020, and that looks different. All right, so now let's have some fun. What I'm going to do is I'm going to delete all this work. I'm going to remove the WP test folder. Now you see that's gone. I'll go and delete that database. So now that database is gone. Now I want to show you that install script that we had before. I'll go back here, users, my user account, and I'll go into that bin folder. Well, for you, you would type out the install-wp-sh. For you, this will create a brand new file. It'll be empty. But for me, it'll open up the file that I currently have. All right, so we have the shebang up here. We have the database name. So we're going to create a different database over here. We have the database user, database password, the host. It's going to create the new installation in this folder, in our htdocs folder. The site URL will be localhost/WP new. Site title, the admin user, admin password, admin email. So what this is doing is I'm creating a bunch of variables over here. Then I'm going to use those variables in these various WP commands. And they're going to run one after another. So first thing we're going to do is download the core of WordPress into this folder that we're going to create. The path is set to WP-dir. Then we're going to create the config file like we did before. WP config create, the database name, database user, database password, database host, and the path. Then we're going to set debugging to true. We didn't do that before, but we're going to do it here. So WP config set WP_debug set to true. We're going to create the database, WP db create path. That's the path. Once the database is created, then we're going to install WordPress. Now let me show you. Let me reduce the size of this for a moment so you can see the end of it. at the end of these very long strings, you're going to see -- path and then the WP dir. So we have install WordPress, WP core install, the URL, the site title, the admin user, admin password, admin email, and the path. Those are these variables up here. And then once it's installed, we're going to go ahead and install all those plugins that we did before. WP plugin install and the slugs of all those plugins. And then again, we're going to end with the -- path, WP dir. Then we're going to activate all those plugins. We're going to delete the default plugins and delete the posts and pages that are there. And then we're going to take that other command that we did before to generate a bunch of articles for us, the default content. We're going to use echo space -e and then lorem ipsum. I have a lot of lorem ipsum here, but just remember to put it between the quotation marks. And then afterwards, it's going to be -- path WP dir. But before that, see, we closed out the quotation mark there. Then we're going to use the pipe command to pipe in this command, WP post generate -- post content, a count of 20. And this is the path. And then we're going to set our permalink structure. And then we'll create 2 new users. And then we're going to echo WordPress installed successfully. So if you made any changes, when you X out, you're going to have to hit Y as well. So press Control X. And if you made any changes, just hit Y. And now, from anywhere, you can just type out install -wp -sh. And let's see what happens here. Let's see if this works. It's supposed to download WordPress, create the config file, create the database, and run through all those steps that we had within that file. All right, so it created the directory. In that directory is downloading the WordPress core. It's going to run through the different processes, and let's see how that works. It downloaded WordPress successfully. It generated the config file. It updated the constants in WP debug. It created the database. WordPress installed successfully. Now it's installing the plugins. It's going through it step by step. So instead of you every time having to type out all those commands, with a shell script, you could change the variables around because obviously you're going to want different values for those variables. But then you just got to run the script and you're good to go. If you need to install it to your server, you just SFTP it or you SSH into the server itself and upload this. And now you saved yourself a whole lot of carpal tunnel syndrome by having to type this all out each and every single time. It installed the 13 plugins and it deleted the 2 default plugins and it activated all plugins. And we got the success created users and WordPress installed. Now we see we have that brand new folder right there. Let's go back to the browser. I didn't refresh the database yet. So you see we don't have that database here yet. Once I reload, now we have it. WP new. And we have 3 users right there. If we go to the browser, we see we have that there. We go to the admin section, try those credentials out. That's demo and root, our hyper secure credentials. We see we have the posts. We see we have the plugins, the users, and our permalinks are set the way we want. And there we go. All right, so we covered a lot of ground. We covered a lot of content here. Gave you a whole bunch of commands. Make sure to check out my website, pixumweb.com. I'll leave a link to the article in the description down below. It'll have all the commands that I demonstrated here and probably some more. All right, so that was a lot of information we covered. We went through WP CLI, how to set it up on Mac OS, how to set it up on Windows. I showed you a bunch of different types of commands you could use in order to optimize your workflow and your process of creating content, managing content, and just overall management of your WordPress site. Now, a lot of the stuff you can do within the GUI. That's what we're all familiar with. But once you get to know the power of WP CLI, you're going to find it's a lot easier to manage your WordPress website. And if you manage more than one website, you're going to find that you would prefer to use the CLI in order to go into the server, just run WP plugin update -- all, and boom, it updates all your plugins. Or WP core update, hit enter a return, and then boom, it's done. That's a lot faster than logging into the site, going into the back end, and things of that nature. All right, so hopefully you found this video helpful. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe. Hit that notification icon. As always, share your thoughts and comments down below, and I will see you in the next video. Happy coding.